Hi everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a brand new story to share with you, so let's begin. My name is Thomas, and for 12 years, I lived a life that I thought was perfect. I had a wife, Jane, who I believed loved me, two beautiful kids who made every struggle worth it, and a home filled with laughter and warmth. If you had asked me back then, I would have told you that I was one of the lucky ones, that I had built something real and unshakable. But life has a way of proving you wrong when you least expect it. See, betrayal isn't only about cheating. Sometimes it's about living a lie without even knowing it. It's about waking up one day and realizing that the life you spent over a decade building was never really yours to begin with. I know a lot of you watching have been in relationships. Some of you are married. Some of you have kids. And maybe you think you know your partner inside and out. I used to think that too. But after what happened to me, I realized that trust isn't just about love. It's about proof. Because no matter how much you love someone, if they are hiding something from you, then you're living in an illusion. By the time I'm done telling you this, you'll understand why I walked away from the life I thought I wanted. You'll question things you never thought to question before. And maybe, just maybe, you'll see the danger of trusting blindly, the way I did. Let's get into it. Jane and I met at university. We were both young, ambitious, and full of big plans. We clicked almost instantly. And by the time we graduated, I was sure she was the woman I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. We got married a year after graduation. We built our life together from scratch, growing from two broke college graduates to homeowners with a family. We had our ups and downs, like any couple, but I never once questioned our foundation. I never suspected a single thing. If someone had told me back then that my entire life was built on a lie, I would have laughed in their face. But the thing about truth is that it doesn't care about how perfect your life looks. It doesn't care about how happy you are. It just waits, silent, patient, and inevitable, until the moment it all comes crashing down. One morning, I woke up with no reason to believe anything was wrong. I was off work for the day, and since the kids were on break from school, I figured we'd just have a relaxed time at home. Jane had to go to work. Her job didn't come with the luxury of flexible hours like mine. So it was just me, Daniel, and Ella in the house. I made them breakfast, and we spent the morning watching cartoons, laughing at the silly jokes, and just enjoying the time together. Around noon, it happened. One moment, Daniel was sitting on the couch, playing with his toy car, and the next, he collapsed onto the floor, gasping for air. At first, I thought maybe he had just tripped or was joking around, but then I saw the way his body tensed up. His breaths were short and shallow. Panic hit me so hard. I had never seen him like that before. My hands shook as I rushed over, calling his name, hoping he would answer. But he couldn't answer. I don't even remember how I managed to get my shoes on or grab my car keys. Everything became a blur. I scooped Daniel up in my arms, barely feeling his weight. Ella, who had been watching everything with wide, terrified eyes, burst into tears. She begged me not to leave her alone. I couldn't, she was just a little girl, and she had just watched her brother collapse. So I took them both. I grabbed Ella's hand with one arm while carrying Daniel with the other, ran to the car, and sped toward the hospital. I kept checking the rearview mirror, watching Daniel in the back seat, praying he wouldn't stop breathing before we got there. The moment we arrived, I screamed for help. Nurses rushed over, and in seconds they had Daniel on a stretcher, wheeling him away while firing off questions at me. What happened? How long had he been like this? Did he have any medical conditions? I answered as best as I could, but honestly, my brain was barely functioning. I kept pacing the hallway, clutching my phone in my hand, debating whether or not to call Jane at work. I didn't want to panic her until I knew exactly what was wrong. After what felt like an eternity, a doctor finally came out and told me they had stabilized him. I let out a breath I didn't even know I was holding. But then, before I could fully process my relief, the doctor said something that made my stomach tighten. "We need to know his genotype." I frowned. His genotype? That wasn't something I had ever really thought about. But I knew that Jane and I were both AA, which meant our kids had to be AA too, right? Simple genetics. Still, something about the doctor's tone made me hesitate. It wasn't just a casual question. There was a weight to it. AA, I said, but for some reason, I felt uneasy as I said it. The doctor narrowed his eyes slightly, as if reading something in my hesitation. Are you sure? The way he asked made my chest tighten. I had never actually checked. I had just assumed. I opened my mouth to confirm again, but the words felt strange on my tongue. The doctor sighed, his expression unreadable. Just to be safe, we're going to run a genotype test. I didn't argue. I just nodded. I remember sitting in that hospital chair, waiting for the doctor to return with the results. When the doctor finally walked in, holding the clipboard with Daniel's results, I wasn't nervous. I had no reason to be. This was just routine, just a precaution. But then, he looked up at me. Your son's genotype is AS, he said, his voice calm and professional. I blinked. The words didn't make sense at first. That can't be right, I said, shaking my head. I'm AA. My wife is AA. That means our kids have to be AA too. The doctor glanced at me, then at Daniel, who was lying on the hospital bed, tired but stable. We ran the test twice, he said. The result is the same. For a moment, my brain refused to process what he was saying. I wasn't a doctor, but I knew basic biology. 2 AA parents cannot have his child. It just doesn't happen. Can you check again? I heard myself say, my voice suddenly unsteady. The doctor sighed, nodding. We can run another test, but I assure you, this result is accurate. So they did. Another vial of blood, another hour of waiting, another stretch of time where I tried to convince myself there was a mistake, a mix-up, maybe even faulty equipment. But when the results came back, they were exactly the same. Daniel was as. I stared at my son, his small fingers gripping the edge of the hospital blanket, completely unaware of the storm building inside me. The doctor must have seen the look on my face because he spoke again, his tone careful. Would you like us to test your daughter as well? I nodded, barely able to speak. If there was some kind of mistake, if this was a mix-up, testing Ella would clear it up. Another test, another round of waiting, my mind racing through every possibility. The result? Ella was AA. I should have felt relieved, but instead, I had an uneasy feeling. Why was Daniel different? I tried to come up with logical explanations. But no matter how much I tried to convince myself, one thought kept repeating in my mind. Over and over like a whisper I couldn't silence. Check everything. As I sat in that hospital waiting room, the seconds dragged by like hours. My hands felt clammy, gripping my knees as I tried to steady my breath. I had already told the doctor to go ahead with the DNA test, but now that I was waiting for the results, I wasn't sure if I was ready for them. There was still a small part of me that hoped I was just overreacting, that this was all some medical misunderstanding that could be explained away. I didn't tell Jane what I was doing. She was still at work. When the nurse finally walked toward me, holding a sealed envelope, she handed it to me with a neutral expression, as if she had no idea she was delivering a death sentence. Here are the results, sir. I took the envelope, tore it open, and unfolded the paper inside. And then everything stopped. 0% paternity match. I blinked, my vision blurring. I read it again, thinking maybe I had misread something. But no, it was clear. Neither Daniel nor Ella were mine. I was heartbroken. I took a deep breath before dialing Jane's number. The phone barely rang twice before she answered. Hey, babe, she said, her voice bright but distracted, probably still at her desk. I kept my voice even and controlled. There's been a medical emergency. I'm at the hospital with the kids. There was a sharp inhale on the other end. What happened? Is it Daniel? What's wrong? Her words rushed out, panic already settling in. He collapsed. They're running tests, but he is stable now. I'm leaving work right now, she said without hesitation. I'll be there as soon as I can. And that was it. I hung up before I could say anything more. Because if I had stayed on the line even a second longer, I would have said the wrong thing. My voice would have cracked, or my breathing would have given away just how broken I was inside. I sat there in the hospital waiting room, staring at the black screen of my phone. All I felt was numbness. She arrived in just under 40 minutes, rushing into the waiting room like she had run the entire way from the parking lot. Her eyes darted around until they found me. Then she exhaled, relief washing over her face as she saw Daniel responding to treatment. "What happened? How is he doing?" she asked. "The doctor just released him," I said, my voice calm, detached. "He's stable now. He's fine." Jane's shoulders sagged in relief. She covered her face with her hands for a second, taking in the news before she turned to me again. "God, I was so scared," she whispered. "Let's take him home." I nodded. No emotion. No reaction. She had no idea that the man sitting next to her wasn't the same one from that morning. By the time we got home, Daniel had fallen asleep in the back seat, his head resting against Ella's shoulder. Jane was still whispering prayers under her breath, thanking God that he was okay. I pulled into the driveway and put the car in park, but I didn't move. Jane unbuckled her seatbelt and turned to me. "Are you coming?" I shook my head. "I just need a minute." She hesitated, but didn't push. She got out, carefully pulling Daniel into her arms while Ella trailed beside her. I watched them disappear into the house, the front door clicking shut behind them. And then I lost it. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly. My chest heaved, and before I could stop myself, the first sob tore through me. Then another, and another. I cried like a man who had just lost everything. Because I had. Many years of lies. I don't know how long I sat there. Maybe minutes. Maybe hours. But when I finally pulled myself together, I wiped my face, took a deep breath, and stepped out of the car. It was time to confront my wife. When I walked into the house, the kids were already asleep. Jane was in the kitchen, humming to herself as she rinsed a plate under the sink. I didn't start with small talk. I placed the envelope on the dining table. "We need to talk," I said, my voice calmer than I felt. She turned around, wiping her hands on a towel, her eyebrows drawn in mild concern. "What is it?" she asked. I swallowed hard, staring at her. "I got the kids tested at the hospital," I said, "for their genotype." Her face didn't change. "Okay," she said, her tone light, but I noticed how she adjusted her posture, straightening slightly, as if bracing herself. I took a breath. "Daniel is AS." She blinked. "What?" "He's AS, Jane." My voice was steady, but I could hear the strain in it. "That's impossible, right? Since we're both AA." Her eyes darted to the side for just a second. "That doesn't make sense. Maybe there was a mistake." I let out a short, bitter laugh. "That's what I thought too. So I had them run the test again. Same result." She frowned. "I don't understand, Thomas. What are you trying to say?" I could feel my pulse rise. "I did a DNA test," I said, voice tight. "For both of them." Everything stopped. She just stood there, frozen, her face unreadable. I reached for the envelope, pulled out the papers, and slammed them on the table. Her body jerked at the sound. Her hands trembled as she picked up the documents. I watched as her eyes moved over the words, her lips parting in a silent gasp. And then she broke. A choke sob escaped her lips. "Thomas, please." Her voice cracked, barely above a whisper. I said nothing. I just stared at her. Tears streamed down her face as she reached for me, but I stepped back, out of her grasp. "I am sorry," she whispered, shaking her head rapidly. "I swear I am sore." She sobbed harder, covering her mouth as if that would stop the sound. "I love you, Thomas. I swear I love you. You don't lie to people you love," I said. "You don't let them live a fantasy while you carry the truth." She kept crying, kept pleading, but I was done. There was nothing she could say to make this better. I just turned around, walked past her, and made my way to the guest room, the house that no longer felt like home. The next few days were pure torture. Jane moved carefully around me, her voice soft, her steps hesitant. She tried to act normal, like nothing had changed. But nothing she said or did could fix this. She started cooking my favorite meals. Jollof rice with perfectly fried plantains, spicy goat stew, grilled fish seasoned just the way I liked. The house smelled like comfort, like love, but it only made me sick. How do you eat when your stomach is full of betrayal? At night, she would knock on the guest room door. "Thomas," she'd whisper, Please talk to me. But I never answered. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering how long she had watched me love those kids, knowing they weren't mine. And then, there was the worst part, Daniel and Ella. I still tucked them in at night. Still listened to their stories about their day. Still kissed their foreheads. They didn't deserve any of this. They were innocent. But every time I looked at them, my heart broke all over again. A week passed. A week of silent meals, forced small talk, and fake smiles for the kids. A week of Jane trying, hoping, praying that I would come around. I couldn't. One evening, I sat on the edge of the bed in the guest room, staring at my suitcase. I wasn't angry anymore. I stood up and grabbed the suitcase, moving quickly now. A couple of shirts, a few pairs of jeans, my laptop, my essentials. I wasn't even sure where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay. Before I walked out, I went to the dining table, pulled out a sheet of paper, and wrote the only thing I could manage. I can't do this. I love the kids, but our entire life was built on a lie. I need to go. I placed the note where she would see it, then took one last look around. I turned off my phone, grabbed my car keys, and walked out. I didn't look back. The next morning, I was at work, trying to keep my head down and focus. Then, just before lunch, Jane showed up. I stood up just as she rushed toward me. Her face was streaked with tears, like she had barely taken the time to get ready before coming here. People were starting to stare, but she didn't care. "Please, Thomas," she choked out. "Come home. We can fix this. We have to fix this. Jane, there's nothing to fix." My voice came out steady, but inside I was crumbling. "What am I supposed to tell the kids?" she pleaded, her voice breaking. "They're asking for you. They don't understand why you're not home." I exhaled sharply. "That's your problem now," I said, my tone cold, detached. "You should have thought about that before you lied to me for 12 years. She shook her head violently, stepping closer, her hands reaching for mine, but I pulled away. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," she sobbed. "I'm sorry. Things will never be the same," I told her, my voice firm. "I can never trust you again." She gasped as if I had struck her. More tears fell, but they didn't move me. I had spent the last week drowning in pain, while she had spent 12 years keeping secrets. I stepped back. "Goodbye, Jane." I turned and walked away. A few days later, the divorce papers were sent to her. And just like that, the life I thought I had was over. So what did I learn? First, trust but verify. We like to believe that love means never questioning the people closest to us. But that's not true. If you love someone, you should trust them, yes, but that trust should be earned and maintained, not blindly given. I never once doubted my wife, never once thought to check things for myself. I assumed the kids were mine because they called me Dad. But I was wrong. And that assumption cost me 12 years of my life. Never assume. Ask. Check. No. Second, love is not enough. We're told that love can conquer all, that as long as two people love each other, they can work through anything. That's a lie. Love without honesty is just an illusion. It's like building a house on sand. It might stand for a while, but eventually it'll collapse. I loved Jane. I loved our family. But love couldn't fix what she did. Love couldn't erase the fact that she looked me in the eye for over a decade and never told me the truth. If love is real, it comes with honesty, respect, and trust. Without those things, it means nothing. Lastly, healing takes time. I won't lie to you and say I'm completely over it. I still think about the kids. I still wonder if I made the right decision. I still wake up some nights feeling like I'm stuck in a nightmare. But I also know that some wounds are too deep to just patch up and move on. Some things can't be fixed. And that's okay. Some betrayals are too big to forgive. Some people don't deserve a second chance. And sometimes, walking away is the only way to truly heal. So now, I'll ask you, what would you have done in my shoes? If you were me, if you found out that the life you built was based on a lie, would you have stayed? Would you have forgiven her? Would you have tried to fix things for the sake of the kids? Or would you have walked away like I did? I want to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if this story made you think, if it made you feel something, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.